All right, I'm meteorologist Ross Ellis. Do an audio check here. We've had a couple issues with that over the last couple of weeks, so I want to make sure that that is working all right. Let me know if you can hear me. Hopefully you're letting me know if you can hear me at this point, if you can't. This is Getting Schooled, and we are talking. This is our last week, and we're talking all about summer this week, even though it doesn't really feel like it yet. But today, talking about the changing seasons. Tomorrow, how appropriate is this? I feel like every single week that we've done this, the weather's kind of been appropriate for it. We had a meteor shower on the day in the week that we were talking about, the space weather, meteors. We had some winter weather into May when we were talking about winter weather, and it is going to be feeling more like summer as we head towards next week. But tomorrow we're talking about tropical weather and hurricanes, and we have our first tropical storm of the season a good 2 weeks early before the tropical season begins. Hurricane season begins on June 1st, and here it is the 18th of May, and we've got a tropical storm already. This is the 6th year in a row, by the way. We've had some sort of tropical system get going before the start of the season. And then coming up for us on, let's see, Wednesday. Wednesday is kind of a wild card because I want you guys to let me know if there's something specifically you want me to talk about. We are going to talk about extreme heat and some why you don't want to go inside of a car and that type of thing on a hot summer day or a locked car. We'll get into some safety as well and talk more about what the dew point is and why that matters. But really, a lot of that day is going to be questions and what you want me to talk about. So if there's something there, let me know. Especially as we get into the questions part today, let me know so I can start to plan for that coming up on Wednesday. But anyways, for today, we'll talk all about changing seasons. And here's a look at that lineup. Looks like the audio is coming through all right. Everything's a little slow, though, on my computer over here for the questions. But let me get the video loaded up. Everything will get working just fine. By the way, I don't know if you can see, kind of step out of the way. You can't really see it too well, but if you're wondering where the rain is, some of us have got it right now. Others are waiting for it, but that heavy band of rain is now into our western counties and just slowly moving this way. But anyways, today, changing seasons, what we're talking about tomorrow, hurricanes, Wednesday's extreme heat, and anything else that you want to talk about. I'll carve out some time for you for that. And then next week, it's summertime, and Getting Schooled will come to an end here. All right, so this is not a mistake. You've got a video of me down in the corner, but you also got me full screen here too, because I want to demonstrate something today. So we're talking about the changing seasons, and why do the seasons change for us? Well, it comes down to the tilt of the Earth. So here's our globe, and in fact, I'm going to set the globe here, and I'm going to move the camera here. So I'll kind of go back behind it and play cameraman here for a second. Whoa, that's a really close-up shot. And if we go that way, then we get what looks like a bunch of pictures of ourselves. Okay, so here's the globe. It doesn't look like it's too in focus, but hopefully you get the point anyways. As it spins around each day, we're spinning around on planet Earth, and we're up in here is where we're at. And so each day you can see that this Earth is going through, and it's on a tilt. You can see that, how it's not, if it were totally straight up, it'd be something like this, which would be a little bit more on the straight side. But it's not. The Earth is at a tilt when it goes around, which is really, really important. Now, it's really bright in here. There's not a whole lot I can do about that, but I'm going to shine a little extra light. And this is my sun now, my sunlight. And you can see that when that sun is shining bright, onto the Earth. So there's our sun. It's moving across the Earth, okay? Actually, the sun doesn't really move. It's more Earth. So here's our Earth. That's the sunlight is moving through. And it's north of the hemisphere here. So this would be like summertime for the northern hemisphere, which is, we're not there yet, but we're getting there. We're talking about summer this week. But this is what it would look like. Now, if we go on, as the sun doesn't move, but the Earth does, and it rotates all around, it changes that tilt. But anyways, on a given day, if we tilt the camera around on this side, this is where it's more of a shadow. That's where it's going to be darker, and that would be nighttime. Where you've got the sunlight shining on it, that's where it's going to be daylight time. All right, so I'm going to take you back over. Here's our Earth as it spins around. And if this is my phone with a flashlight, I know, real creative. I couldn't have a model of the Earth, but not so much of the sun. But you can see as that sunlight is on it, if the sun doesn't move, it's the Earth that's going to rotate around the sun, right? As it's rotating around, it's this tilt of the earth that's going to be so important here. So here's a look here at the earth. Again, here's where we're at right now. And as that tilt is kind of towards the sun, that's when we're in summer, but as it goes all the way around, kind of on the other side of our sun, what's going to happen is that everything's going to be the opposite. And all of a sudden the sunlight's going to be facing more towards the southern hemisphere is where that tilt is going to be at. So the reason we have seasons all has to do with the tilt of the earth. I'll put the camera back here pretty close to where it was. But the tilt of the earth, the fact that it's at that angle is why we get all 4 seasons. If it wasn't, you would have, if it was straight on, you wouldn't have any seasons at all. And you would have, it would be very hot at the equator because the sun would always be overhead. As we came up here, it would be like fall or spring all the time. And then as you went farther north, it would be cold all the time. And actually, if you didn't have that tilt and the seasons, you would still have weather because the sun is what directs our weather altogether, but you wouldn't have as much as these moving systems back and forth. Things would change quite a bit around the earth. So that not only does the seasons help our growing and give us our life as we know it on this planet, but it would affect the weather in dramatic ways. So that tilt of the earth, just the fact that it's an angle, has everything to do with the seasons and where we're at as we rotate around the sun each and every year. So let me go over to another graphic here. Maybe this will be a little bit easier instead of my globe in the background, since it's a lot easier if I were be able to do this in person, but a little tougher with that little camera. But on January 1st, you've got the tilt of the earth. For us, the sun's more angling towards the southern hemisphere, and you can kind of see that on here, where you've got, let me see if I can, here's our arrow, the direct sunlight, and it's below the equator. We're up here at that time. And as we go around, we've got the vernal equinox, that's the first day of spring. We have the summer solstice, that's the first day of summer. And then as we get towards the autumn, the first day of autumn, the equinox there, the sunlight's equal. Then we go back to winter and we keep rotating around. And that's our journey that we take. Now the time in December and January, it's pretty interesting because we're actually closer to the sun in January and December, in the middle of our winter. We are closest to the sun compared to the summertime. Isn't that crazy? We're actually farther away from the summer. You would think, if you just thought about it that way, that in the wintertime it would be warmer, in the summertime it would be colder. But that's not how it works. It's the tilt of the earth that makes all the difference in the world. We do actually, as Earth as a whole, actually is going to get a little more solar radiation and warmth globally during our winter time compared to the summer, if you just think of the amount of solar radiation coming in. But we're actually a little closer to the sun in the middle of the winter, and because of that, as we get closer to the sun, we speed up and actually kind of rotate around the sun a little bit quicker. And so as a result, our day, believe it or not, is not exactly 24 hours, which makes a difference. Our day, when it comes to the orbit of the sun, this is a complicated one to explain, but it's actually about 24 hours and 30 seconds. It's only 30 seconds more. In the summertime, it's about 30 seconds less. Well, it all adds up into a shift in the daylight. So if you wonder, if you ever keep a real close eye on when the sun's coming up and when the sun sets, you may notice as you get right around, say, the first day of winter, the sunrise time is about the same, but the sunset is getting later. So we start gaining this time back, but we're not gaining a whole lot all at the same time. So kind of interesting. We do get that question a lot. Why? If we're supposed to be gaining daylight, why aren't we gaining it in the morning? It seems like it takes forever in the wintertime, and the opposite thing happens in the summertime. But kind of an interesting thing. So again, the seasons comes down to the tilt of the earth. It's so important here. So here's our earth again. Here's the equator. Sun's directly over the equator. Well, that means we're at the equinox. So equal a day and night length for all areas of the globe at that point. And again, the sun, the rays are directly over the equator at that time. So that'd be the first day of spring. That'd also be the first day of fall. So right now we are inching our way closer and closer to the first day of summer, which is kind of a different ball game altogether. That means that the sunlight is going to be favoring North America. We're already gaining more and more of that daylight each and every day. We're getting longer daylight. The sunset's getting later. The sunrise is getting earlier. The first day of summer this year is June 20th. That is our summer solstice. It is usually the 20th or the 21st, so it's coming a little bit early in a sense. Also, the first day of spring was 2, just a bit on the early side. It was at March 19th. So the reason for that is we had leap day this year. So every year, it actually takes us 365 and a quarter days to go make our trip around the sun here on planet Earth. And so every 4 years to our calendar, we have to add an extra day, or else it would be a big problem, because after several years, all of a sudden, things would get all out of whack. June would feel like July, and the next thing you know, June will start feeling like September and October, and it gets pretty messed up. So here's a look again at our sun and the Earth, as the Earth is rotating around the sun. And obviously the distance of where things are at has a lot to do with it. So again, here's our tilt of the Earth, and this is the first day of spring, and also would be the same essentially for the first day of fall. But you can see the sun rays are directly over the equator at that time. As we go towards summer, this is what we're getting closer and closer to. Those solar rays are essentially right over Hawaii and very, very close to the very, very southern edge of Florida, closer to Key West. It's not quite there, but it's very close. And then as we go beyond the first day of summer, things start to go back down, and we're back down towards the equinox once again. But for the first day of winter, all of a sudden those solar rays are going all the way down towards Australia and southern parts of Africa. So the southern hemisphere has summer when we have winter. Everything is flip-flopped all around for us. So that's kind of a basic overview of how those seasons are changing. Again, we're right now, another interesting thing I want to point out is that why don't we have the hottest day of the year somewhere around the first day of summer? That's when we're getting the most sunlight. It's right around June 20th, give or take a day or two, depending on what year it is. So why in the world are our hottest days usually in late July or even August? Well, it takes time sometimes for the Earth to heat up, and almost like a frying pan, if you were to make an egg or something like that, you build up all this heat into that pan. You're building it up, building it up, building it up. Why is it that all of a sudden when you turn off the heat that the pot doesn't go all the way back down to the normal room temperature? Well, it's because it takes time for the heat to release. So it takes time for that heat to begin to go away. So it's kind of a similar thing. So just like the same thing as noontime is when we get the most solar radiation directly overhead, but the hottest temperature of the day usually doesn't happen until about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because while we're still adding a lot of that warmth and heat in, and we still already have a pretty warm ground at that point. So that's usually that point of when it happens. But anyways, questions, we'll go over to them and see what we've got so far. And again, if you've got some ideas of what to talk about on Wednesday, we'll get to that too. Joshua Martin, when will weather be safe to plant my garden? We're good to go at this point. I know it's a little cool outside right now, but you are in good shape to plant your garden. We've got, it varies every single year. We've had frost as late as Memorial Day, which is coming up here pretty soon. And we've had times where we get to May 1st and we don't have anything at all anymore. And kind of the golden rule around here is right around Mother's Day, you should be good to go. This year it did not pan out because we had several frosts right after that, early last week. But at this point, you can plant those gardens. You're in great shape. Daniel saying, has the pole shifted towards Siberia? Okay, so there are a couple different poles here that are taking place. There's the physical North Pole here of the planet. So if we're looking straight at the North Pole, if we're looking at this spot right here, that's our North Pole. That's the geography of the planet, the North Pole. It does not change. Same thing with the South Pole. It's going to stay the same. Now, there are magnetic North Pole and magnetic South Pole. The magnetic North Pole actually is not necessarily heading towards Siberia. Siberia is clear up here. And we've got Canada here. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm taking it back. The magnetic North Pole is kind of drifting towards Siberia, so you're right on that. So it's moving away from Canada, or actually it's still in Canada. The magnetic North Pole is actually closer to us than the geography of our planet's North Pole. So that magnetic North Pole does wobble around all over the place. It is drifting back towards the actual North Pole of our planet. And if it keeps on going, it would kind of back its way towards Siberia. So it is moving that way, kind of away from us. But this changes all the time. In fact, on a yearly basis, it moves around. It's not constant at all. And there have been points in our history of the planet where the North Pole and the magnetic North and South Pole have actually flipped, and they flip back and forth. So this has happened on more than one occasion, and likely will happen again in the future. And if and when that happens in our lifetime, which is a huge if it happens while we're around, it would change a lot of things when it comes to, if you've got a compass and you're trying to figure out where to go, all of a sudden it would change that quite a bit. So again, that's kind of moving in the geography, not just geography, but geoscience altogether. But the magnetic pole and the geography, the North Pole of the planet, are not the same. The geography point does not move. The magnetic pole does kind of flip around all around here. Let's see. Jackie asking, why is there so much wind? So wind has to come down with pressures altogether. But let me tie in something else while I've got the globe here, because the globe is spinning around, and that's really, really important, because as the globe is spinning around, there is a force on the Earth that kind of directs the wind speeds either west or east, depending on where you're at. So, for example, if you're down far enough west and south as you get down towards Hawaii, their trade winds are generally more out of the northeast here. So we'll say east to keep it simple. As you go across the United States, it's generally west to east. It's the opposite. So these bands of wind will change depending on where you're at. Same thing for the South Pole, well, not the South Pole, but Southern Hemisphere altogether. Those winds are going to change whether they're out of the west or whether they're out of the east. But then as these area low pressures and high pressures develop in those bands, in those trade winds, that's what really directs how strong the winds are. The stronger the difference in the pressure, the stronger the winds. So if you think about mom or dad's got a lot of air inside their tire. That might be something we say. There's a lot of air in that tire. We don't want to let the air out. But what we're really referring to is there's a lot of high pressure inside that tire. And air likes to go from high pressure to low pressure. That's where it goes. That's how it moves. And that's what creates wind. And so if mom or dad were to run over a nail in that tire, the pressure difference is such that the air is going to rush out of the tire towards the lower pressure. And you can almost feel that breeze, feel that wind that's coming out of the tire. Now, we don't want that. That's not a good thing. We want that air to stay in the tire, but that's how it would operate and how it would work. So that's what's driving wind altogether, Jackie. Jennifer asking, can we learn about hurricanes? You bet. Tomorrow we're going to learn all about hurricanes. So that we don't even have to make a special session for that. We will talk about that tomorrow. And you know what? And if we don't get to some of those topics, it's not good enough, we can talk about it more on Wednesday. I'm open for that too. Let's see if we've got any more questions here. If there's anybody else has any other questions about why the seasons change, let me know, or anything else that we've talked about for that matter. As for the hurricanes go, it's pretty interesting that, again, already early in the season, we've got that tropical storm that's developed. And the thing is about that tropical storm is it's having an impact on our weather right now. We're not getting the rain from that tropical storm. But if that tropical storm wasn't there, this weather maker that's going to produce rain later today would have been gone probably by midday yesterday. It would have brought us some warm weather, would have zipped on out of here. Today would have been partly cloudy, so more sunshine around the area, and then we would have heated up quick. We would have gotten back into the 70s. I think by mid to late week, we would have easily been in the low 80s as a lot of heat would have been trying to move this way. That tropical storm, think of our storm track that are moving across the country. It's our jet stream. It's our active storm track that's moving across the country. And that's like a highway. And if something in that highway all of a sudden, in the tropics in particular, comes up and it's like a huge semi all of a sudden decided to do like a U-turn in the middle of the highway, and it doesn't work too well. And all of a sudden it just kind of clogs it up, and that's it. And all the other weather makers that are trying to go down have to slow down or even stop and wait for this other semi just to do its thing and get out of the way. That semi being our tropical storm that we have right now. So this weather maker that was going to bring us rain, it slowed down, it slowed down, it slowed down, it's essentially almost stopped. And it's going to bring us a few showers. There's heavy rain right now just to the west of Toledo, and yet it'll probably take several more hours for the heavy rain to get into Toledo. I mean, that's how slow this is moving. once that tropical storm gets out of the way, things can start to move along again. That heat will come our way, and we'll be back into it. Jennifer asking, why is there no 6 seasons? So yeah, why isn't there just 1 season, or why aren't there 10 seasons? So what's happening is that really there's 3 things here. When you look at the globe, it all comes down to the tilt. You've got the point where it's at the furthest point north, you've got the furthest point south, and then obviously it's going to cross right in the middle twice during that season. Or during the course of a year, as we rotate around the sun. So in a sense, if you think about it, we've got the farthest north that we go, and we've got the farthest south that we go. Really, if we wanted to classify it, we could just have 2 seasons, if you want to think of it that way. We don't think of our weather in terms like that, but we've got the farthest point north that we go, and for us, that means it's our summertime. And we've got the farthest point south that the light's going to end up going. And for us, it's the middle of the winter. And so really, you've got the middle of the winter, you've got the middle of the summer, and then everything else is kind of in between. In fact, depending on who you listen to, now we've got a specific point where the light's going to hit the equator, the specific point where those happen. So it's an easy kind of middle ground to say equinox. And to kind of have your spring and fall seasons. But from a meteorological standpoint, from a weather standpoint, those spring and fall are what we call transition seasons. We're really kind of stuck in the middle between summer and winter on both of those. So it's kind of in the middle of a season. Now, when you do get close to the northern part that it goes and the southern part that it goes, that sunlight kind of hits there for a while. So that does kind of give us a longer season. If you think about it, December, January, February, the temperature doesn't change a whole lot during that time. We go June, July, August, the temperature doesn't change a whole lot during that time. It's only a few degrees. So you do get a solid 3-month stretch that's kind of in between that. Now, the other 6 months out of the year, it really can fluctuate back and forth pretty wildly. So the season aspect of why we have 4 seasons, I mean, that was figured out by humans a long time ago, but you could almost argue that we've got 2 seasons and a third one is just kind of a transitionary time in between it, which is kind of an interesting way of thinking about it. But yeah, we don't have 6 seasons. That's kind of a little harder to make that argument. Let's see, Courtney asking, can we learn about Ice Age? Well, let me write that down. Let me see what we can do on Wednesday for that. So let me write that down right now so I don't forget about it. Okay. All right, sounds good. Let me see if I can work that in. Looks like that's all we've got for questions for today. Tomorrow we'll talk all about tropical weather. That is a big weather topic that we have not touched on yet. We'll talk about tropical storms. We'll explain why they develop. We'll explain why they're so violent, and yet they're not like a tornado at all. If we had the same conditions that produce tornadoes try to interact with a hurricane, it would rip a hurricane to shreds. It just doesn't work out. So tomorrow will be an exciting day to go through that and learn all the ins and outs about tropical weather right as we get near the beginning of tropical season. All right, take care. All right, take